Wren, one of the really interesting things I've enjoyed so much hearing about your process is the interesting way you approach writing your characters. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So really ever since I started writing, when I came back to it towards the end of university, I started trying to write characters that could be played by almost any actor or as wide a range of actors as possible. So that means that actors of any gender, any ancestry, almost any age and ability is what I try to go for. And I'll admit that I'm not always successful in being completely broad and open with that. Often age is a bit difficult, and ability sometimes can be difficult, depending on what the story is. And I do write a lot of plays that explore the military. And so there is an assumed level of physical ability, but I always add a note saying that I'm completely open to a director wanting to come in and bust that apart and break that open, just so that we can see a broader range of stories on stage. And yeah, I have fun doing it. And it's interesting that it was hard initially to write characters like that. And I'd like to think I'm getting a lot better at it as I continue to do it, to the point that I think it's hard for me to write specific characters of a specific gender or age. I was very grateful to be commissioned by Guanduck Theatre and the Yukon Human Rights Commission to write a play on sexual harassment in the workplace. And I was like, okay, well, this is one where I probably am going to have to write gender to an extent. But when I sat down to write, it really wasn't coming out that way. And it was just, well, sexual harassment can happen to anybody of any gender. So why should I start to narrow it in? And actually wrote this whole play that there was one character who had recently changed their pronouns. And that was the only stipulation, though. It could have been any change of pronouns. But the point was that it was a change of pronouns and they were being discriminated against because of that. So I find it really freeing, and I find it really exciting as an offer to other artists to make the characters their own.
Right. Yeah. So, and why exactly have you taken this approach? I mean, you talked a little bit about that, but could you just expand on that a bit?
It started in university, where I was in the acting honors program. And I was there more to be a director, but I also always liked acting. And being so frustrated with the narrow perspective allowed to particularly female characters, but then also male characters. Because I remember one day a male actor was trying to find a more vulnerable monologue and was having a hard time finding that for a man. And it was like, well, just read a woman's monologue. And like us women often do it all the time in acting programs, right? We read the Hamlet monologue because it's like, we want to read something interesting and engaging that's not only about romantic relationships and your children or your friends. And that's so often what women are limited to in the monologues that I came across. And that was frustrating. And at the same time, had come across the play The Possibilities, which my acting class did. And that play had a couple characters, and I got to play one who was just called Officer. And there wasn't any like, this person needs to be male, this person needs to be female. And that just kind of blew my mind a little bit, how it still worked. And it was actually super interesting that in that particular scene, two female presenting people were cast in a scene that was actually about like how to dress, modestly or whatever. It's a super interesting play. I need to read it again at some point, but that was sort of the inspiration of why should we limit our characters into these narrow stereotypes of how we perceive the world to be. But it's not that the actor's gender won't impact my stories. It will have an influence, but they aren't limited by that. And the story still works and still stands on its own, regardless of who is inhabiting the role.
Great. I've loved our discussions about that, Wren. It's been really, really interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine. This mentorship's been really awesome. So thank you.
Yeah, it has been. And thank you. I've learned so much from you. It's been great.